My name is Kevin Kimwelle. I am a professional associate, community architect, and project manager. The research, development, and innovation work that I do. Sorry, there's a bit of people should mute their mics. So the research, development, and innovation work that I do centers on creating precedents in communities. In South Africa and in Southern Africa, in promoting the idea of alternative designs, which are locally based. At the very beginning of my research, what I realized was actually the green agenda is marginalizing communities that cannot access the green techs, the solar panels, wind turbines, EVs, which happens to be a majority of the African communities. So what is the African tech to actually engaging with the green agenda and not being left behind? And part of it actually lies in design. Using recyclable materials, for example, in my case, to align to the green agenda and then create social economic impact. A critical part of this work is creating these precedents with the communities. So it's a very collaborative process. It's a very co-creative process, which sees the community as part of the process, and the community itself is the biggest asset in the work. So I'll take you through a series of projects. I've selected a few just to kind of align and give you an idea of what we have been, what the research has been looking at. I will start with Custamoko. And as my friend Mundano in Brazil says, waste speakers are superheroes with the worst superpower. Reason being, we see them, but we do not acknowledge them. The city never acknowledges them. The design community doesn't acknowledge them. Yet they do a lot of the recycling for us. And I'm talking outside, for example, of industry, in residential areas in cities. And many times, unfortunately, they are mistaken to be druggies and junkies without people really realizing their importance. And in this case, I happen to know Custamoko, and this is a couple of years ago. And what we did is from the very beginning, we decided this was almost like a teamwork effort. I needed to understand what the challenges were on his end holistically, and then be able to integrate a solution that works with him. So this is him in one of the neighborhoods, and we tracked him to where he collects the material, where he takes it, the distance he takes it, what he trades it for, and in this case, for example, he trades his waste for tokens, which he's able to then reuse, use for buying stuff in a shop, which is through a barter trade method. So he doesn't necessarily get money, but he is able to barter trade and get things that he needs for his family and his needs. We went to his home. So this is a setting of his home. This is him doing the work. And this is really important. I mean, this is a process that took about several months. We're talking about 6 to 8 months of really just understanding Kusta. Who is he? What does he do? How does he do it? What skill sets does he have? And in this process, we started, well, I found out that first he is actually quite multifaceted, once he's done the retrade stuff, which is where he trades his recycling material to get his food stuff and basic needs. He also is a cobbler. He fixes bikes, he's a very hands-on guy. And when we went to his home, we found that he was a brocolier, he just collects everything and he builds stuff from it. And through the process of engaging with him, actually, we ended up with a slightly larger project. The NGO that was actually trading his stuff was being closed, and we had to intervene there because of Kusta, so that the NGO survives. So basically, the NGO was an a part of the city which is kind of very expensive. The neighbors were complaining about the waste being unsightly, and what we did is we built a temporary structure to hold their waste, which means we kept them in business. And in the process, we investigated how to solve or how to assist Kusta Moko. We had two interventions. One was actually a waste bike and a waste cut. And then the other was we built him a home and a workshop. In this presentation, I'll mainly, what I'm showing you is a waste bike, basically. We went to a shop with Kusta. He chose a second-hand bike that suited his style. As you can see, it has a certain flair to it. And then we started prototyping the back section of it. All this material that you're seeing here at the back is actually recycled material. We only worked with material that we could find within our area of recycling. Most of it happened to be from the motor car industry, because Port Elizabeth is like the Detroit of the state. So there's a lot of motor car industry waste. And then we reassembled the entire design and put it to him. And of course, because it's hands-on, I could explain to him how the battery system works, where to pack it and things like that. I mean, I didn't need to tell him about fixing punctures and maintaining the bike. And what we found out is the other thing is we put a customized plate, Kusta, on the bike. And what happens is people started looking at him and his business a little bit different. So whereas the first one of his cuts had been pushed out and crushed by trucks because people are very impatient, they just see waste because of creating traffic and things like that. Now they started looking at him differently. They would look at the waste bag. It gives the work that waste pickers do dignity. It gives them value, and people start re-looking and rethinking recycling differently. So this is the story of Kusta Moko. And now moving into a slightly different scale to Joslova community, where we through a very long process of engaging with the city and a couple of NGOs, a community had occupied a piece of land and forced government to buy it. And then they went through a whole reblocking process, which is basically that piece of land then has to be divided by a set of community members. I mean, it's a very long process. We're talking about 10 years. And we were called in by an NGO that was specifically looking at doing, the NGO is Christian based, so they were just looking at supporting the community with soup kitchens and and the church, of course. So when we went in through an asset-based community mapping process and really digging into the community to understand what there is, I realized there was a lot of houses built out of pallets in the community, and wood and things like that. And of course, this is because GM, General Motors, was right next door, so they could collect this stuff. And what we did is we put together a design that used the exactly same material that was accessible to the community, but then we kind of accelerated that design. And what we did also is through the asset-based community mapping process, we realized that the facility that we provided had to play multiple uses, because there were different users or different parties that we were meeting, businesswomen, businessmen, the political side, the cultural side of activities and events, and then youth and education. So what we did is we designed a community center that could be a facility, a social amenity that can serve different purposes to the community while they wait for their Mandela House or their RDP house to be rolled in. So this is an entirely temporary structure made out of pallets, as explained. You can see the pallets here. So we looked at the weaknesses of temporary structures or shacks in townships. We lifted the whole design up so that air can go through the bottom and go up through the top. So it regulates the building, basically. So it's warm in winter and it's cool in summer. The other thing that we did is we realized there was a lot of beer bottles in the community, but beer bottles have a very specific profile. So we started working with wine bottles, and we called on the restaurants within the city to actually help us with the wine bottles. And also they started sponsoring a few activities for the youth in this community. So what you're looking at is basically a building that is about 80% recycled. There was an existing shipping container at the back there, and we the agreement with the municipality was to have a temporary building for about 3 years. The NGO that wanted a church was able to have a church, but have the building used for many other functions within the community. So it really became a very important social amenity. We put the roof sheets at the bottom here, so because we realized that the damage to most of the shacks is at the bottom when water splashes onto the ground and then goes into the building. I can send you links about this building later on, and at this is, I think, where design starts really integrating itself into the culture and into the activity of the community. Here you can see the building being used as a creche. For me, this was the most vulnerable part of that community. The young ones that were sitting in these very hot buildings the whole day in the name of a crash, So they were able to use this. Some of the green technologies is the teachers bring the water during the day into this because there was no water. The water is recycled while washing hands, and then it goes into the toilet. And I love this image because it summarizes our design intention. The alternative design with all the material, with all the architecture and engineering merged into value, beauty, and prestige, that the community can see this building differently, and be proud of it, and start creating acceptance of alternative materials or recycled, upcycled in the community, And this project, we stretched it even further. We incubated community members. We created workshops for community members. One of the women actually ended up being able to support her child through we call them Model C schools here, by collecting and selling bottles and recycling. And, so it is possible through an alternative design to really change the perspective of the idea of upcycling and really push it further through, in this case, through research, development, and innovation. I mean, of course, there's a lot of architecture, engineering, testing happening in the university laboratories with our professional consultant team. But this picture for me summarizes the whole thing coming together. We also worked with a couple of NGOs, some of them German-based, American-based, and in this case, the Alliance Française. And in this project, I was looking at the Fête de la Musique, which is a music festival, basically. And the idea was to blend in the green agenda and bring it to the forefront of the festival. And we did that successfully by, for example, in this case, you can see the poster. The poster is basically a background of a palette, and starting to hint at green culture throughout the Alliance Française. This is part of the street festival. You can see all the benches and the chairs and stuff is basically made out of recycled material. So it starts creating a conversation. And even when they get the pamphlets, at the bottom there's a page for the website where people can actually know how to recycle in the community. And this was specifically because as a street festival, we had actually put the festival in a community, which is kind of an upmarket middle class part of the city. And we could have those conversations about waste, and recycling and reuse, this is one of our temporary structures that kind of scared off the municipality at the very beginning. So this whole thing is made up of paper tubes, and we used it as part of the main stage. So this is where it is. You can see it there for the festival, And this whole thing is made up of recycled material. It's about 15 meters by 10 meters long, and below it is screens that show different things in the different stories of different people in the community. And so it starts creating this conversation, and it is a statement, because when people see it at first, they don't realize it's recycled material, but as they come closer and they start getting into the conversation, they realize, wow, this festival is actually more than just about fun and music. There is more to it. And then I will conclude my presentation by speaking about Gogo Selina. Gogo Selina He is part of what we call the forgotten generation of South Africa. She was born in a township. She lived in a single room and her entire life. The building she stayed in was constructed in about 1949, 1954. It's this structure here at the back. And basically what she did is she extended the front of it and the back of it. Her daughter died at childbirth. And we got called into this community. So in this case, the community actually called us to help out because this roof here was collapsing. And what we found out was one of the beams had, because of age of the building, had literally collapsed. And well, in this project, this is one of those projects, your heart kind of goes over the fence and your body has to go through, because we were purely called to fix a roof and ceiling. And what we ended up doing was building her a new structure. And the reason was mainly because we were moved, of course, by her and her living condition, but she has a 16, that's at that stage, this is 2 years ago, a 15-year-old granddaughter who was doing her homework right next to the stove. It's this very cramped space, and we could see the effect of it in really depressing, creating this very depressive environment. And what we did is we decided to rebuild our home out of recycled material. In this case, it's collapsible shipping containers. So we had access to these from Isuzu Motors, and we even the beams that you're seeing, these are beams that we stripped the shipping containers because they usually have a wooden floor, and we laminated new beams, and we started putting together the structure. As you can see there, Gogo Selena is inspecting her new home, wondering what we're doing there. But this is, I mean, we built the one next to the other. And then at some stage, we had to take off the roof here and elevate the building and create this one structure. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to share with you the other screen to show you the final product. And so here is the process. So you can see the process of us building this structure. Just give me 1 second. Let me maximize this. So, I mean, we use, for example, in this case, these are old windows from an industrial building, a separate building. We reattached them and built a door, which is that. We reconstructed the entire beam that had failed on this side here, you know. So we took out the roof of the old building, we elevated it, and now you see the new building with the old combined. But we also realized in the context of violence and in the South African townships and the vulnerability of two women, one young and one very old, in this community, we had to rethink security. And even though the design is very passive in nature, and by passive, I mean the whole building basically works through daylight. We've used very affordable materials. The entire opening, for example, opens up and it's polycarbonate, you know, as you can see. But this door here can close up, you know. So at night, it's this box. It's a steel box that closes down, and they are able to be safe and secure. This is the building from looking from the living room, which is where she used to be before, looking into the rest of the house. Here you can see the laminated beams, including the lighting. We recycled this. These were donated to us by communities in Port Elizabeth. And this is her in her new home. You can see the old fireplace, you know, so we kind of kept the old structure, but everything that you're seeing here is recycled. This building actually is about 95% recycled, and yes, including that floor there. The only components that we could not recycle were especially the electrical components, you know, the ducting and plumbing, the actual pipe with the final water, but the appliances and end products we could recycle. So here you see the old building, the former building, and we've kind of built a 2-bedroom house, a new dining room, a kitchen on the side, a bit of an ablution. We also planted a garden for her. Here you can see the technical aspects of the house. So it's almost a double volume, 1.5 volume, so that it can thermal regulate itself. The whole building is lifted up again to ensure cooling. It has natural lighting. So this here is an atrium right at the center of the house, which kind of cools down, creates brings in light, so their electricity bill should be very low. Then you can see on this side a cross section of it. So there's cross ventilation. This whole area is lit. This building is thermally insulated on the southern side to ensure that it's warm at night and at winter. You can see the front of it with a pergola, you know, tires to keep a garden going and retain, because the building is actually in a swampy area. So we needed to control water around it. But I will not bore you so much with the technical details of it. I mean, this is another sheet again that talks about all the recycled aspects. So this is the technology and the design, the recycling. In fact, the entire building is thermal insulated from refrigerator tanks. Usually have this foam that is put so that the truck can be cool. We took some of that material and we thermal insulated the entire building, and it is unbelievable how cool it can be in boiling summer. We've used crushed glass from the motor car industry to create concrete. You can see the shipping containers here. I'm just seeing what else is here. The wood, the chipboard, we used it for the walls. The floor, we collected the floor. Somebody did know that this was the yellow wood. Well, we took it, we cleaned it up, and there it was, and it creates this beautiful floor. And this is why we do what we do. This is, for me, is almost a summary of the work that we do, creating impact on communities, creating value, changing the perception of communities that see think of recycling and upcycling as this second grade thing that is for poor people, because of this building, well, when we started the building, the neighbors thought we were building a shack, of course. And when we finished it, we started getting calls from neighbors who wanted a similar building, which tells us a lot about perception, people starting to buy in, communities starting to buy in, especially in that segment. Our latest project is actually in Cape Town, the waterfront, and here we will use the green template to show that this can meet all the targets, can push further the boundaries of what the green agenda is. But the strength of it is that it brings together corporates, individuals, NGOs, it creates businesses, it pushes the agenda of really engaging communities. I think also the research is very important because fundamentally it goes back to speak to two groups that are culprits or can be greatly influenced, designers and architects or the build industry, both in academia or in school. So starting to influence how architecture is taught. And then the second part of it, which is practice, by creating these precedents, we are able to use, for example, currently we are challenging the green template. We're meant to meet 40% carbon and energy efficiency, and we're already at 60, just because we are using so much of what is already existing there instead of building new stuff. So I think I'll stop there.